Thanks for joining me for our webinar recording about our very popular Southern Italy program, which covers the regions of the Amalfi Coast, beginning in Naples, and continues on to the heel of Italy, Puglia. And this trip we are offering in April and now in October 2025. This webinar actually is a split together webinar because just about less than 2 months ago, I presented the webinar on this exact same program for April. But because of the very high demand we got from this trip, probably because we had some amazing feedback and people that participated in our trip this past spring said they were going to tell all their friends because they thought it was just the trip of a lifetime. And so we've already added on our October 2025 program. The itinerary is the same, and I just thought it would be a good idea to share with you that webinar because our host of that program, Amber Riedel, I was interviewing her, or she was taking us through some of the highlights for her. And so that's why I am splicing in the introduction part, and the webinar will carry on with, again, the webinar that was originally focused just on April, but now covers October as well, a new departure that we've just opened up. So this webinar, again, all about Southern Italy, Amalfi, Puglia, where we're going to be heading both in April. There's a few seats left on that trip, as well now in October of 2025. So today's agenda is basically me taking you on a bit of a digital journey around Southern Italy. And as I say, Amber's going to be my co-host in that sense, and going to tell you a little bit about these places because she just came back a couple of weeks ago. So first of all, the map, the geography, if you will. Our program begins and for all intents and purposes ends in Naples. Naples, as you probably know, in the southern part of Italy on the Gulf of Naples on the Mediterranean. It's a relatively easy place to fly in from Canada. You typically will have to make a routing stop either in one of the larger European gateways like Frankfurt or Amsterdam or perhaps Rome, and then you can zip down to Naples, and we'll spend a night there before heading along the Sorrentine coastline. That's this stretch of seashore that goes around here to this peninsula, which forms the Amalfi Coast on the south side. And we're going to be spending the first 5 nights in Vico Equense, 6 nights in Vico Equense, which is a wonderful town that I discovered last year, that is just outside of about a 10-minute train ride from Sorrento, which is the very famous, very touristy principal city along the Amalfi, or along the technically the Sorrentine coast. So this coast here, facing northwest, is the Sorrentine coast, looking out towards Naples and Mount Vesuvius. And on the other side of this peninsula is the Amalfi Coast, with the famous towns like Positano and Amalfi. So as I said, we're going to spend 6 nights there. Then we're going to go overland across the southern part of the underside of the boot, if you will, of Italy, stopping in Matera, and then heading to a lovely little village in central Puglia called Locorotondo. And this area is famous for the Truffle houses, and I'll explain a little bit more about that when we get to that point in the webinar. We're going to spend 4 nights here in a lovely little Masserie. It's like an agriturismo, family owned, and I'll tell you about that in a moment. And then we'll spend our last 2 nights down in Lecce, which is an incredible Baroque city at the towards the tip of the heel of Italy's boot, if you will. So you can see the big picture map of Italy on the inset over here. So that gives you a sense of the ground that we're going to cover on this program. So let's dive right in to the day-by-day itinerary. Excuse me, starting off with our arrival in Naples, which will be on April the 9th next year. Naples is a large, kind of a rough and tumble kind of a city. It's very, very old, but it has a beautiful old town. We're going to be spending a night here. Our main purpose is to sort of gather our members who will have flown in from different parts of Canada. We'll probably head out for a little cocktail. Amber, maybe you want to share a little bit about what your experience was arriving into Naples.
Sure. So the lovely thing about most of the flights coming in, our flights come in early to Naples, generally routing from Canada. And so this was the perfect day for people to get their travel feet, get to know each other. It was, we're so well located in Naples to get to the Duomo and to the little shopping areas that within 10 minutes you were everywhere that you wanted to be. So you could go out on a little 1 hour trip and then you would be back. We ended up where we're staying in Naples happens to be 6 minutes from one of the most famous pizza shops in Naples. So just so happens that we sauntered over as a group and found ourselves just having the eat, pray, love pizza experience. But, you know, the lovely thing about it as a group, I had sort of already figured out that this place was there and went and got the 411, that it was a 2.5 hour lineup to get into the pizza place. So
Nice.
instead, one of the barrio owners let us sit and have drinks, and he Uber Eats the pizza from the place across the street while we had drinks and we ate the pizza and had drinks. So that was what our first day in Naples mostly looked like, was us gaming the system of lineups and eating
It
pizza in
sounds
Naples.
like such an Italian experience, Southern Italian. It's about gaming the system. How do you get to what you
100%.
want?
Yeah.
Circumvent. So
The lovely thing about just one day in Naples is she's a little gritty. Like there's something lovely and gritty about Naples, but one night is exactly the amount of time till you want to sort of head into the more idyllic parts of Italy.
that's exactly right. And after we spend this one night in Naples, we're then going to make the trip down the coastline, and you'll go all the way around the Bay of Naples, passing Mount Vesuvius, which it won't be as obvious to you until we actually arrive into Vico Equense, and then all of a sudden, boom, there it is in front of you. And so let me say a couple of words about Vico Equense, and then Amber can sort of elaborate based on her own experience and what our members who were just there last month thought about the town. But Sorrento is the most famous town along in that particular part of the Amalfi Coast and the Sorrentine coast. But the one thing about walking down the street in Sorrento is that you hardly hear an Italian voice because it's basically all tourists, which is not a bad thing. But Vico Equense, which as I say is about a 10-minute train ride before you get to Sorrento, is quintessentially Italian. I mean, it's literally it's such a real Italian town. And we're going to be staying actually just outside the town in a little suburb called Saiano in a wonderful five-star hotel that overlooks the Bay of Naples as basically the view that you see here. You'll look out to Mount Vesuvius, out to Naples, which is just a little bit further over to the left. So you have incredible views, a lovely hotel, a great base, I think, for the first 6 nights that you're there, right? And Amber, maybe you want to sort of give our members a bit of a context about the location relative to things around and all the activities that we're engaging in.
Sure. So I have to admit, I was a little bit nervous about staying in Vico Equense. I have stayed in Sorrento. It is busy. I still really loved it. I was worried about being outside of Sorrento. The moment I stepped foot on the property, all of my concerns went away. It was so quiet and it was like breathtaking and lovely. You wander just outside of the hotel, and there is like really local restaurants. And, you have the old men on the corner arguing about things. And then you like and there's a barrio just up the road. And there's a fantastic pizza place that's just underneath. You just like hatchback, do the switchbacks down, and you're at the pizza place. So the moment I arrived, that disappeared. What I really loved about it is how quiet it was and how simple it was to get to everything. So one of the things that I struggled with in the times I've been to Sorrento in the past is everything is very close on paper, and then you get in a car and you sit in the same block to just get out of the main area of Sorrento, and it takes you a half hour to 45 minutes to go to 3 blocks. Whereas Vico Equense, we were like a 15-minute drive to every place that we were going to locally. and it was easy to get to Pompeii without all of the traffic and all of the buildup of Sorrento. So for that way, it felt like logistically, this was just the dreamy, dreamy part. And our members, and myself included, hopped onto the train a number of times to pop into Sorrento. And the lovely thing is, the train that you get on is a 4-minute walk from the front door of our hotel. And then the train stops at Sorrento for a half hour. So the concern about, oh my God, I'm going to get on the train and then end up in some undisclosed location. It's like when the train stops for a half hour, you are in Sorrento. So you just get off and you know that you're there. And then 4 stops late going back and you are there. So it really was such a dreamy place to be location wise, and was not nearly as traumatizing as it was like the concern ahead of time that we weren't going to be right in Sorrento, because everything was still at our fingertips. It was quite simple to access.
Amazing. So thanks for sharing that very, I think, viscerally about why I thought when I first found this place in this hotel, I thought this is a wheel and anchor experience at this hotel, because we're experiencing Italy and Italians and all, and again, there'll be lots of time to spend in Sorrento, which is a short hop away. But most importantly, as you said as well, it's the from here we can access the major attractions. Like, for example, our day trip to Capri and Anacapri, which we will organize by a private boat, literally from just underneath where our hotel is. So again, we don't have to go into the hustle and bustle of Sorrento in order to be able to to be able to catch a trip over to Capri. And Capri is all that you can sort of imagine. It's this mystical jet set island that is just off of the Amalfi Coast. And is really charming. I mean, it's here. The interesting thing about Capri is that for all its beauty, and it is a beautiful island, but it's quite a busy place. I mean, there are basically either the sort of ultra wealthy that own villas and so on up there, and you'll see a little bit of that. You'll go up to Anacapri, which is the village that's at the top of Capri, and from there you look down back over to Naples, over to Sorrento and the Sorrentine coast. And there's what sort of struck me is all of the high-priced shops. It's like walking down Oxford Street in London. It's really all a bit surreal, but it's an amazing place to do a trip. And we do a trip there by day by private boat, because it's kind of a must-see when you're in that part of Italy. Closer to home, we spend a day learning about cheese and pizza making and so on. And we're going to go and visit the Gargiulo family, which is kind of partway between Vico Equense and Sorrento. You get up into the hills, you're in the countryside, you think you're nowhere near all the tourist hustle bustle. And here we learn about Italian cheese. And if you know what Italians are, they're so passionate about all of their food, but cheese in particular. And one of these things, what I like about these kind of trips, is you go to these, family places, and I hadn't realized how much value that Italians put on fresh mozzarella. And for them, fresh is like that morning. Like there's no such thing as mozzarella the next day. That's the stuff they ship out and, to pizza restaurants to put on the pizza. Perfectly good, but it's like fresh mozzarella was made that morning. And so they'll show us the same experience you had. Is that right, Amber?
Yeah, 100%. And the fresh mozzarella, but then there's like versions of fresh mozzarella. In Canada, a little more difficult with the unpasteurized and all of our regulations to be actually making. The thing that I loved about Sarah is Sarah also showed us how to make a cheese that didn't require the unpasteurized, so that we could actually go home and create our own cheese that within 45 minutes to an hour you could be serving, and then lightly drop to your guests that, like, no, I just whipped up this cheese and made it for you an hour ago, when you're on the back deck on a Friday night at the cottage. So it was pretty interesting, having the daughter of the owner of the farm be the one that was translating these recipes into like Canadian isms for us.
Yeah. It's amazing to be able to sort of bring some of those traditions home with you. So this is a great sort of half day experience, culminating with some pizza, for lunch, also homemade. And then the rest of the day is spent in enjoying actually the town of Sorrento. And there's lots to explore and see, and God knows the shopping is quite amazing. And I think that there's time to spend the rest of the afternoon at leisure. And theoretically, members can stay in Sorrento and have dinner there if they wish, and then hop on the train to come back. Is that right?
That was exactly our group. We opted, there was a favorite restaurant of you and I that we wanted to go and see. The proprietor is just a very wacky, amazing Italian family. And so our entire group opted to stay and shop. And then we went out to dinner and then all made our way back and jumped on the train and back to Vico Equense afterwards. So we made it a really enjoyable long day.
And it's again, it's also because it's a different day, because it's like, oh, I'm gonna hop on my train to get back 10 minutes. Which that 10 minutes by train could take you as long as a half an hour by road, because anyway, you'll see when you get there, there's one road into Sorrento and everybody takes it. So it can be so being able to go back and forth by train is quite remarkable. So we then have a free day, which then again, once again, enables you to go out and explore some of Vico Equense on your own. And at this time of the year, you can wander down to the beach that's underneath the hotel. You can go through the town itself. You can hop into Sorrento for the day. You can go in the other direction. You can go, theoretically back in the direction of Naples for the day. There's lots of different options to do. And, having free time, I think what from our other group that was also in on this trip earlier this year, our host Todd commented to me that half the group were just happy to just sort of sit around the pool and taking these incredible views that you just don't get every day, and it's such a lovely hotel. So that will be a free day in Vico Equense. We then, of course, will do the ultimate trip to the Amalfi Coast by a private boat, which will once again pick us up at the pier underneath the hotel. And Amber, why don't you share a little bit of your experience of this private boat experience down the Amalfi Coast?
Well, the interesting thing about taking the private boat is you get to have the vistas and the views that when you're in a car, you're looking down on. So it's like you really are. My experience of being in the car has been lovely and light, and I will always remember it. However, it was a lot of big intakes of breaths and being very nervous and sitting in traffic for long periods of time. Whereas it felt like watching the jagged rocks turn into the tiny little cities that were in the towns that were dotted along the coast, and then seeing Positano sort of come around the corner and see Positano in its glory from the water was again an intake of breath. It's like something that I'll never ever forget. And it's the way that this area is meant to be seen, as far as I'm concerned, as well. Like, yeah, there's just nothing
It's
like it.
Absolutely. It is a beautiful drive, but to do it by boat. In the lead up to this, I visited the Amalfi Coast a couple of times, and we had another trip there before with a slightly different itinerary. And hands down, our members said, "Oh, private boat experience is the way to go." So it will be a day that you will undoubtedly not forget. Of course, this region as well has a very, very rich and history, in particular the history that surrounds the eruption of Mount Vesuvius that happened in 79 AD. And so I love this shot actually, because you get a picture of the city of Pompeii, which is of course at the base of Vesuvius. And during this day, we'll go up to the volcano and you can walk up to within about a 25 minute walk of the crater rim. The last leg you do have to walk. It's uphill on a very well-trodden road. So it's not a difficult walk, but it is uphill. And you can actually peer into this volcano that is still considered active, not like active like it goes off every few years, but it is, you can still see little fumaroles coming out of the volcano. So it's really quite a remarkable mountain, or quite a remarkable volcano. And then you have this incredible lunch on the side of Mount Vesuvius before heading into Pompeii. And you can see how this city was literally stopped in its tracks. And I think that's the part that really grabs people, because this is a city that is, well, 79 AD. I mean, it's 2,000 years old for all intents and purposes, just about. And you can peer into people's living rooms and into their kitchens, and our guide Ornella does an incredible job of sort of weaving this story of what people's lives were like. They have enough information that they can sort of actually characterize the kind of family that lived there and who they were and what they did, and and how the whole city worked. And it's remarkable to think that this was 2,000 years ago. So Pompeii is an incredible experience. We'll spend a day out visiting that. And again, it will be a very memorable time. Well, then
If I may, Gordon, can we just stay there for a second?
Yeah,
Because
yeah, by
one
all
thing that
means.
I really appreciated about the itinerary for this day was how we've set it up to take into account for all of our members what their level of comfort in climbing, say, Mount Vesuvius. Because for anyone that hasn't climbed a volcano, the notion of we're climbing a volcano today sounds daunting and like not a really good idea. So the interesting thing about it is when you drive up, we drive up to a base camp. So it's a base area that we get off, and people are welcome to climb as far or as long as they feel comfortable. It's a go up and come down the same route. So you can go up to the first terrace and take your time, have some pictures of a lookout. And then the great thing is it's Italy. So of course there is a bar there where you can have a glass of wine and stay there for the entire time while everyone else, or a cappuccino if you really had to. So, it's not like you're forced to walk up or you're just standing around waiting at the base. It really is like you can enjoy your time regardless of how much walking on a volcano that you want to do. And the same thing for Pompeii. It's a little bit of walking. It's not too uneven, but it's enough that you should be prepared to get your 10,000 steps in that day. But again, for anyone that wanted to sit down, there was a way to come back, and Ornella would pick them up if they didn't feel like they wanted to continue walking. This day is really perfect for our members, taking into account how far you're comfortable walking and what your mobility challenges may be.
Yeah, thank you for characterizing that, because I think it's really important. We definitely take the comfort of members into account in planning all of these sightseeing tours to these wonderful places. So we'll then bid farewell to Vico Equense and embark on our journey across the southern part of Italy. And the nice thing is it's a bit of a lengthy travel day. I think the total drive time is about probably around 5 hours, or not even that long.
It's a little bit less than that. I think it's closer to 4.
Right. But after the first 2.5 hours, we'll arrive at a city that is truly remarkable, Matera, which is known for its cave dwellings, as noted here in the caption. But there's much more to it than this. This city occupies this whole valley. And I wish I could show you sort of a 360-degree view, because it is a wow, like it is literally an out loud wow kind of an experience. It is hilly, like you can see here, but once again, the way we've set it up is that when we arrive into town, we meet our guide and we go for a walking tour, which is the optimal way to visit it. But if somebody's like, I did my 10,000 steps yesterday on Vesuvius, you can take a little one of those little tourist trains that will take you around all the main parts of the city, and you'll get all of the vistas from all directions. And it's a remarkable spot. Did you want to say anything else about Matera, or otherwise we continue then? So it's a great breakup as well. You stop for lunch in Matera, and then in the afternoon continue on. It's only about another hour and a half or so from there to Locorotondo, specifically to our Masserie. And so this again is a place that I discovered. It's been in the same family for now 13 generations. And Masserie is the southern Italia, the Puglian version of an agriturismo. So they have their own farm. They're surrounded by farmlands. The town itself is about a kilometer away. And you live most of the rooms are in these truly these cone-shaped roof houses with the stone bricks on them. So the character is wonderful, but it's really the hospitality of the family that makes this into such a remarkable experience. Maybe you want to share your own thoughts about staying with Anna Maria at the Masseria.
This was more than one of us cried when we left. The experience of like leaving your own family, like you're part of a family at the end of staying there, was so fabulous. And I can't describe to you the countryside around here. Like you have a perfect view up to Locorotondo, but you're in fields of like olive trees and the olive grove. When you're talking to Antonio, he just casually mentions, it's like, oh yeah, those olive groves about 1,000 years old. Like it's just this casual mention of this 1,000-year-old olive grove that you're in. So it feels like it's such an insider insight into what it's like to be rural Italy and be part of it. We spent because we take over the entire Masseria, our afternoons were often spent on the back deck that overlooks the flower garden and the vines. And that's where we would have, afternoon drinks and cocktails while we decided what we were doing for dinner that night. And it was really lovely. And the rooms were just gorgeous. Like it really did have the feeling of being in someone's home, but being so profoundly taken care of by this family that it was quite touching to be there.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place, and of course, we have it all to ourselves. And in fact, that is one of the beautiful things about this trip is that it's limited to 16 members because well, entirely because of this masseria, because we literally take every room in the place, and we can't take any more people. So which is also a nice feeling because not only are we part of their family, but they're part of our family. And that again makes a dynamic that you just don't often see. So it's a great jumping off point to explore this part of central Puglia. One of our first stops, of course, will be the town of Alberobello, which is considered the capital of if you will, of the Truly houses. And so this is a shot here that I took from one of the main sort of outlook points of the city. And this is where you see so many of these, conical roofed houses that this region is so famous for. And it's a busy place. This is where all of the tour groups come to look at the Truly houses. And so it's a vibrant place, but it's a must see when you're in Puglia. It's just one of those amazing things. But after spending an hour and a half or two there, it's enough time to sort of get a feel for and learn about why did they build these particular houses here. And it's literally unique to Puglia. You don't see them anywhere else in Italy. I've never seen them anywhere else in the world. It's quite an interesting story how they came to that. But then we'll hop just outside of town and spend the afternoon at a local dairy farm, and with our guide Michele. So again, we have a dedicated guide in Puglia. He's a chap from the hood, if you will, knows everybody everywhere in every town. That's part of the reason why we work with Michele and do this amazing trip, because he knows these guys, the owner of this farm personally. And once again, you'll see the art of dairy production and let's face it, how they make dairy at home is, the same in principle. Milk comes from cows, but it's not the same. And because the amount of pride they put into their products and the quality of stuff that comes out is just remarkable.
What's so interesting about this dairy farm as well, it's like to think about this dairy farm does very little production for anything other than what's sold on the farm. So this is a dairy farm that exists and is so fully part of the community that the community comes to their little deli setup shop, and that's what they sell, and that's what sustains this family. And it's like, it feels like very behind the scenes experience to actually be there. And then that day we eat the farm products completely from the farm literally in Nona's living room. Nona has like rolled out this massive table and we're having barbecue from the farm there. The olive oil is from the farm next to it, and the wine has been traded for beef two doors over. And it's like literally everything touches this farm that you're eating. And it's a remarkable experience being on the ground having that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's one of those times where you think, God, I really got the sense of being in Puglia, in Italy, and that's kind of what makes it special. We'll head onto the east coast of Puglia, because there's a couple of towns here that are very much worth visiting. In particular, Polignano and Mare and Monopoli, because, well, I mean, the picture kind of does all of the explanation for it. These are just absolutely, yeah, charming seaside towns with all the narrow little streets, and little cafes and piazzas, and and then all of a sudden you'll pop out and then you'll overlook this incredible, this turquoise water of the Mediterranean. And so we'll spend the day exploring these towns, having lunch at a lovely spot here, and just soaking in a little bit of the coastal side of of Puglia. And this is, what makes this Puglia experience so interesting, is because we have everything from, the trulli and the dairy and the, inland thing, and we have a little bit of the coastal stuff, and then we do the truffles down in Lecce in the end. So you really get, I think, the best of all of the aspects of Puglia. Anything else to say about this particular day, Amber?
No,
Okay.
this day it was just one of those, like, you can't believe all of the things that your eyes have seen all in one day, and you didn't have to pack and unpack your bag, two or three times to do it. So it just feels like such a relaxed way to see Italy, because, we're setting shop up at one base and then doing these little day trips. So it's like somehow it didn't feel rushed. It felt like we couldn't believe we packed in so much, but also felt like we had a time to just sit and have the afternoon to ourselves, even though we got to see so many different things.
Exactly, and that's the beauty of specifically Locorotondo that we picked as the base, because you can get to all these places, Polignano and Mare and Monopoli and Ostuni here, our next day adventure, in like 25 minutes. I mean, it's a hop, skip, and a jump, which means you can go out, enjoy part of the day, but still be back to enjoy the sun setting, and the beautiful afternoon back at the farm. So it's a great all around sort of experience. Ostuni, the town that's pictured here, is known as the White Town, a hilltop town. So it's a little bit reminiscent for those that are familiar with Tuscany and the hilltops towns that you'll find there. So we explore this town for part of the day, and then we visit the town next door to it, or very close by, which is actually where Michele originally comes from, which is the gastronomic capital of Puglia. I mean, it's hard to find anything in Italy that isn't a gastronomic capital, because, of course, the food is outstanding everywhere. But nevertheless, well, Amber, you share your experience from that day in particular, because this is where our guide Michele hails from.
So this was an interesting day because this town is rarely as visited by tourists. And so it felt like an insider view of that there weren't a lot of non-Italians there. So that was the comment that we kept hearing. It was like, oh, there's not a lot of other people here that aren't from here or from an adjoining town, or you're visiting someone here. So this again felt like a little bit off the beaten path. Is this the day where we then ate at Michele's
Yes,
favorite?
correct.
Oh my gosh. So then our guide took us to the Sunday farm dining. So this is where families go to spend time and unwind when they're not making a massive meal at home. So Michele took us to the place that he grew up hanging out around the fireplace, like huge fireplace. While the parents were all having Sunday, leisurely lunch together. And we just were regaled with Puglia fare. And it felt like love on a plate that just would not stop. So it was just meal after meal, like plate after plate after plate coming out of local fare. And again, was just such a different cut at seeing Italy, that because I hadn't been to Puglia, I hadn't had this experience of how they eat differently than in Tuscany. And that was the thing that was so different, that there were meals coming out that I wasn't familiar with as Italian fare. And so it was such an interesting gastro experience, uncovering things that I had never even heard of. And now I'm like, how have I lived my life without trying these?
And now it becomes a must look for on the menu when you're going to an Italian restaurant back home.
Yeah.
So we then have to wave a teary farewell to Masserie Aprile for the last leg of the trip, which is down to Lecce. And I immediately took a liking to Lecce when I arrived there. It's one of those towns that I sort of drove there going, wonder what's in Lecce. And yet it's known as one of the sort of the main Baroque cities, not just in Italy, but all over Europe. And it is magnificent to walk around these streets and these Baroque buildings everywhere, particularly in the early evening. So sort of after the sun sets and all of these sort of soft lamps come out on the streets of the town, and you think you've just walked into a Hollywood movie. It is unbelievable. And so Lecce really left an indelible mark on me, and we're staying actually at a different place for next year than you stayed, Amber, because not that you didn't have a lovely hotel in Lecce, but I found this family-owned hotel in Lecce. You didn't stay at Palazzo di Bignami, did you? No. Which, when I walked up to the building, I thought, where the hell are you? It looks like a post-war apartment building, totally nondescript. And then you go up 4 floors, and this family has converted the entire floor of this building into a hotel that is like a cross between I hate to say flea market and a museum. I mean, it is filled with the most incredible artifacts of Italian culture. Each room is decorated differently, and then on top of that, they have the entire rooftop of the building, which is all devoted to this hotel. An incredible space. We couldn't get the hotel because I was so far booked in advance for this year's trip, but for next year, that will be the base point for our stay in Lecce, the last leg of the trip. And as I say, Lecce is an incredible town to sort of walk around. We'll obviously take a guided tour, but it'll give you it gives us a chance to visit a little bit of the southern part of Puglia. And so we're going to head out to Otranto, which is again, heading down the very heel of the boot of Italy, if you will. And Otranto is actually another town, another seaside town similar to Polignano e Mare. And here, you find we don't see tons of churches on this trip, so it's good that it's not an ABC trip. And it's kind of like, let's go and visit this cathedral. And the picture doesn't do it justice, but it has the most incredible mosaic tiled floor that I have seen. And I've seen a lot of churches and other religious buildings all over the world, and this place is incredible. In this little unassuming beachfront town in to the southeast of Lecce. And then on this day as well, I believe is the truffle hunting day, is it not?
It is truffles, yes.
So why don't you explain your experience of the truffle hunting?
So the interesting thing is, there are a lot of truffles being harvested in this area. It's not as popular or known for it as other areas. So we meet up to a undisclosed location because truffle hunters never want to let you know where you're going. So there was a little bit of secrecy around where we were going, but we're in a forest with dogs that are trained to truffle hunt. These dogs they've been the 2 truffle hunters, it's a father-son that we work with, and they've been offered 25,000 for one of their truffle hunting dogs. And so basically you are watching these dogs joyfully run through a forest and give alerts for truffles. And you can't take 10 or 15 steps without, at this time of year, because it's just truffle season coming in, for finding truffles. We found probably about, I think it was in the end, about €1,000 worth of truffles inside of an hour.
Wow. Wow. And again, where else do you get the opportunity for this kind of an experience? And truffles are not exactly something. I mean, we hear about them on the menu at home. They're, it's like, oh, truffle this, truffle that. But I mean, let's be honest, most of us don't really know a lot about truffles. But when you come to a place like this and you see the value of it, I mean, the Italians absolutely go nuts over truffles because it's infused into so many aspects of their cuisine. And when you see how it's all about this, super happy dog jumping through the forest, going, "Hey, there's a truffle down here. You better come and pick this sucker up."
Yeah.
It's a remarkable experience, and an incredible sort of way to end off the trip, and make our way home from there. A lot of our members continued on back to Rome by train because you can take one of the super fast Frecciarossa trains from Lecce directly back to Rome, and others flew back out of nearby Brindisi Airport. So there's various options, and of course you could just sort of continue traveling around in that part of Europe. But I think once you've sort of done this trip, you will have experienced so much, and you'll really have felt that you have captured all of southern Italy into it's 2 weeks, but I think that the way that it's structured, it comes across like you've been there for a much longer time. So we think we've really nailed it on this trip, I would say.
I hope you enjoyed that overview of the program provided by myself, and again with the comments by Amber. It truly was a trip of a lifetime through Italy for many of our members. And so I'll summarize the logistics. Of course, all of these details are available in our program itinerary, which you will get, which you've already looked at or downloaded. Otherwise, it should be with a copy of this webinar, and of course available through our website. So for both departures, both April and October, the pricing is the same. We've been able to maintain it for both trips next year. $89.90 Canadian, $11,990 for those who would like to have a single room on their own. For the October departure, we still have an early bird discount available for April. Unfortunately, we've already allocated all of those. We don't have any suites left in the Masserie. But if you would like to go in October of 2025, and if you book before the end of October and before anybody else snaps up the last suites that are available in Locorotondo, we can upgrade you to a suite if you book soon. So do keep that in mind, but please do consider joining us for April if you'd like to. The accommodations are all fantastic anyway, so whether you're in a suite or not is not going to make or break this trip. On the contrary, this trip, again, all of the details in your program itinerary as usual. It includes transfers if you arrive on the first day of the trip, all of the accommodation in these wonderful spots, this beautiful hotel overlooking the Bay of Naples in Vico Equense, not to mention the Masserie and Locorotondo, and also a beautiful hotel that we managed to secure. We didn't get it actually for our spring trip. We had another lovely spot, but we were able to get it further in advance, Palazzo Bignami in Lecce, in the southern part of Puglia. So lots of stuff included on that program. The only thing that really is left for you to sort out, which of course we are happy to facilitate, is the international airfare as well as travel insurance, which of course we highly recommend. Once again, I hope you've enjoyed this webinar and the discussion with Amber about all the highlights of this trip. If you do have questions, please drop a note to Paula. She's more than happy to answer any questions that you might have. I encourage you to sign up for this trip early. April, as I mentioned, as of the date of recording of this webinar, still has some seats, has some spots left, and October is just released now. So Get in while you can. This is an amazing program, and it is limited because of the size of the Masserie in particular. It is limited to 16 members only. That's the maximum number of people we can take on this trip. So thanks again for joining me and for indulging in this spliced together webinar. Hopefully it was informative for you.